The cabin lights dimmed, and a single piece of paper tore in half. What happens when a 10-year-old boy in first class, his boarding pass gripped tight, suddenly finds himself told he doesn't belong? What does it feel like to watch your ticket ripped away, not for any fault of your own, but because of the color of your skin? In this story, we follow Emery Duvall as he boards Meridian Skies, Flight 4087, filled with excitement and the innocence of youth. His father, Marcus Duvall, CEO of the airline, watches from afar, unbeknownst to the crew, wanting his son to experience the world without privilege's shield. But the moment the pass is torn, everything changes. Will a calm, principled leader risk his reputation to defend his child? Can one family's courage spark an airline-wide reckoning? And what happens when the truth spreads faster than any storm journey with us above the clouds, through boardroom battles and heartfelt apologies, toward a future where everyone truly belongs? If you believe in standing up for justice, hit like, share this video, and subscribe now to join us as we uncover the full story. The plane was already in the air. Somewhere over the Atlantic, 36,000 feet above the world below, the hum of jet engines mixed with the soft chime of seatbelt signs flicking off. The cabin lights dimmed into a warm golden tone, casting everything in a false calm. Champagne glasses clinked gently. A flight attendant smiled politely as she walked past row 2. Then, it happened. The sound was small, quick, even forgettable to someone distracted. But for those who heard it, it was unmistakable. Rip. A single sheet of glossy cardstock was torn neatly in two. One half drifted toward the floor. The woman in uniform, Carla Voss, stood with her back straight, her jaw tight. Her eyes were cold, calculating. She was holding a torn boarding pass in one hand, the other curled into a fist at her side. Across from her sat a boy. He looked no older than 10. His name tag, from the airline's youth traveler program, was still clipped to his chest. He wore a navy blue button-up shirt with a tiny white airplane pattern, slightly oversized jeans, and a small backpack with a bright red zipper. A silver airplane keychain dangled from it, a gift from his father. His name was Emery Duvall. He had been quiet the whole flight, polite, respectful. He did nothing wrong. And now he was being told, not asked, that he did not belong in seat 3A. "That's not your seat," Carla said again. Voice lower now, more firm. "You need to return to economy." But Emery's voice cracked before he could finish the word. He wasn't sure what he was even going to say. The boarding pass had been in his hand just moments ago. He had checked it 3 times. Gate B22, seat 3A, first class. His father made sure of it. He even double-checked the email confirmation. And now it was gone. The silence that followed wasn't total. People were watching. The man across the aisle looked up from his tablet. A middle-aged woman clutched her glass of rosé just a little tighter. Further down the aisle, someone pulled out a phone. The quiet was not absence, it was fear. Carla stepped closer. Her voice lowered, but the sharpness remained. "I'm going to ask you one more time to gather your things and move to the rear of the plane. This seat is for a confirmed first-class passenger." Emery blinked at her, stunned. "I had a ticket," he whispered. "Not anymore," Carla replied flatly. He looked down again, his chest tightening as though the pressurized cabin had suddenly lost all air. His fingers gripped the armrest. He hadn't moved since takeoff. Emery had imagined this moment for months, his first time flying alone, his first time in first class. He dreamed of the warm towels, the window view, The sparkling water they brought in real glasses. He never imagined this. Behind them, a few rows down, a voice spoke up. "I saw him board. That was a real ticket," said a man older, white, with silver hair and a pair of reading glasses tucked in his shirt collar. "Mr. Sinclair." Carla turned slowly to him. Her mouth curled into a tight smile. "Sir, please mind your own travel experience." Emery's cheeks burned. He was trying not to cry. Not here. Not in front of all these people. His body stayed frozen, but his mind was running. He thought about calling his dad. He thought about asking again. He thought about the small, shiny ticket that had once proved he belonged, and now it was in pieces. He reached for his backpack, his fingers trembling. Then a voice. Not loud, not aggressive, but somehow it cut through the tension like a crack of thunder through a summer sky. "Excuse me." The crowd shifted. Heads turned. A man stood near the front of the cabin, dressed in a tailored black suit, his shoulders broad, posture effortless. He walked down the aisle slowly, each step steady, deliberate, unhurried. People moved without being asked. They knew instinctively he was not someone to obstruct. His shoes clicked softly on the carpet. His voice never rose, but it wrapped around every word like velvet and steel. "I believe that boy is my son," he said. Carla Voss went still. Her throat moved as she swallowed, but she said nothing. He presented a fake boarding pass. She stammered, "He wasn't on my list." The man didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "You tore up a valid first-class boarding pass issued under my family's name," he said calmly. "And you did it in front of a cabin full of witnesses and cameras." He nodded toward the people holding phones. Some were already live streaming. Carla's face drained of color, because now she knew. Marcus Duvall, founder and CEO of Meridian Skies Airlines, the airline they were flying on, and she had just publicly humiliated the son of the man who built it. Emery turned toward his father, a mixture of shame and relief washing over his small face. Marcus reached down slowly, picked up the pieces of the torn ticket. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He looked back up at Carla and said, simply, "You will answer for this." Then he turned to the nearest flight marshal. "Escort this woman to the crew quarters. Immediately." The marshal didn't hesitate. Carla opened her mouth as if to protest, but no sound came. She looked around, realizing no one would come to her defense. Not this time. The camera phones didn't blink. Neither did Marcus. He turned to Emery and knelt beside his son. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Emery nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. "Come on," Marcus said. "Let's go home." The father and son walked slowly back up the aisle as murmurs buzzed behind them. The flight crew whispered nervously. Some passengers clapped softly. A few reached out with words of support. Others just stared. But what no one knew in that moment was this: that small, quiet rip of paper mid-flight. It was about to shake the sky, and some people would do anything to keep it quiet. Emery woke up early, not because of an alarm, not because someone called his name, but because his excitement was louder than sleep. The sun hadn't risen yet over the quiet Chicago skyline. A soft orange glow stretched lazily across the edge of his window. Outside, the streetlights still flickered and the trees barely moved in the wind. But inside his room, his world was already moving 100 miles per hour. He sat cross-legged on the carpet, surrounded by carefully folded clothes, 3 Ziploc bags of snacks, his favorite headphones, and a small navy blue suitcase with his initials E.D. engraved in the corner on his nightstand. A boarding pass was propped up against his alarm clock like a trophy. Meridian Skies Airlines Flight 4087, Seat 3A, passenger Emery Duvall. He had read it 27 times, and every time it made his chest flutter. Lena Duvall stood at the doorway, arms crossed, watching her son check his backpack for the 4th time. She smiled gently. "Did you pack your phone charger?" "Yes." "Mom." "Toothbrush?" "Yes." "Passport?" Emery paused. He blinked, then he turned, scrambled toward the dresser, yanked open the top drawer, and held up the small blue booklet triumphantly. Lena raised her eyebrows. He grinned sheepishly. "I was just making sure you remembered to remind me." She walked over, kissed the top of his head. Today was a big day. A scary one, too, in the quiet ways no one says out loud. It was his first flight alone, first class, Chicago to London, 8.5 hours. He was only 10, but Emery had a calmness about him, an old soul. His teachers always said so. And flying. That had always been his dream. He loved planes the way some kids love superheroes. He knew models, engines, tail numbers. He had posters of commercial jets on his wall and could tell you which airline used which livery. His father used to quiz him. "What's the difference between a Dreamliner and a 707?" Emery always had the answer. At breakfast, the kitchen was unusually quiet. No TV, no news playing in the background. Just the gentle sound of eggs sizzling and toast popping from the silver toaster. Lena handed Emery a glass of orange juice, then turned to the stove. He sat at the counter, swinging his legs, looking at the framed photo on the fridge. It was him and his dad at the Meridian Skies hangar, standing in front of a massive A350. His dad wore a suit. Emery wore goggles and a flight jacket, 5 sizes too big. That day felt like a lifetime ago. The front door opened. Marcus Duvall stepped in, dressed in a charcoal overcoat and gray slacks, his briefcase slung over one shoulder and his phone tucked into his palm. "Morning," he said softly. Emery's face lit up. Dad Marcus smiled, walked over, ruffled his son's hair gently, and kissed Lena on the cheek. "You made it," she said quietly. "I wouldn't miss it." He pulled a folded sheet of paper from his coat and placed it gently next to the boarding pass. It was a printed confirmation. Paid in full. First class. Non-refundable. Non-transferable. Emery's name typed in bold at the top. Marcus looked down at his son. "You remember everything we talked about?" Emery nodded. "Check in early. Be polite. Stay calm if anything feels weird. Call you if I need help." Marcus smiled. "That's my boy." Lena turned from the stove, placed a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of Emery. She had kept it simple, just the way he liked. No pepper, no butter, just warm, soft, and comforting. For a moment, they sat together like any normal family. But beneath the surface, Marcus felt the weight of the decision he'd made. He hadn't told the airline staff who Emery was. No notes, no alerts, no flagged itinerary. Just a normal passenger. Because he wanted his son to experience the world like anyone else. Not as the CEO's child. Not as a protected kid with a corporate shield. Just Emery. But deep down, something gnawed at him. Was that naive? Would the world give his son the same grace it gave others? He shook the thought away. Emery was smart, kind. He deserved this. At the airport, everything went smoothly at first. Check-in was seamless. The woman behind the counter smiled at Emery and complimented his jacket. His bag was tagged and sent down the belt. The youth travel coordinator, a tall woman named Julia, greeted him kindly and walked him through security. Marcus and Lena stood back, watching. "He's ready," Lena whispered. "I know," Marcus replied. "I just hate that I still have to hope the world will see that too." Julia guided Emery toward the boarding area. Marcus followed at a distance, not as CEO, but as a father. Gate B-22, Flight 4087. A staff member scanned his boarding pass. Emery clutched it tightly. Julia handed him a Meridian Skies envelope with emergency contact numbers, snack vouchers, and a pin that read First Solo Flyer. "Boarding starts in 10, she said. Marcus pulled his son aside for one last hug. "You got this," he said. Emery nodded, hugging back. "I know." But as they waited, a quiet ripple moved through the gate. Flight 4087 to London will now depart from Gate C-17. The announcement rang. Emery's face twitched slightly. "That's okay," Julia said. "We'll walk over. Happens all the time." Marcus frowned. He didn't like unplanned changes, but he didn't say anything. He watched his son walk toward the new gate, Julia's hand gently on his shoulder. He didn't know what was waiting at Gate C-17, didn't know about the woman in uniform who would look at his son and see a problem, didn't know that within 2 hours. Every part of his plan to protect Emery would unravel, and neither did Emery, because in that moment, all he felt was wonder. He pressed his face to the window and watched a jet take off in the morning fog. "I'm really doing this," he whispered. He didn't notice Carla Voss standing at the other end of the gate, arms crossed, lips pursed. He didn't hear her murmur, "Is that kid in first?" He didn't see her glance at the new passenger list and raise an eyebrow. And he didn't hear the soft voice behind her whisper, "Just move him if you're not sure. It's probably a mix-up." In that moment, the sky was still open, but it wouldn't stay that way for long. The cabin smelled like citrus and leather. Emery stepped into the plane holding his boarding pass in one hand and his backpack straps in the other. The air was cool, calming, the kind of air you imagine only exists in first class where the world is supposed to feel effortless. A smiling flight attendant greeted him at the door. Not Carla, a different woman, younger, with tired eyes and a cheery voice that barely held up under the pressure of long-haul travel. "Welcome aboard, sweetheart. Let me see. Seat 3A. "Right." Emery nodded, handing her the pass like it was made of gold. She smiled, handed it back. "Right up there on your left. Window seat. You're lucky. That one has the best view." He gave a small grin and moved forward. The first-class cabin was quieter than he expected. Luxurious, but not loud about it. No blinding gold trim or celebrity selfies. Just the hush of privilege, soft overhead lighting. Rows of leather seats, wide and spaced far apart. Each one came with a blanket, a bottle of water, and a tiny orchid tucked beside the touchscreen menu. Seat 3A was next to the window. Emery stopped in front of it and stared. It was beautiful. The seat curved gently, hugging the space like a shell. It had its own lamp, its own footrest, its own little storage pocket. Emery reached up to stow his backpack, fingers trembling just a bit as he clicked the bin shut. He sat down slowly, running his hand across the armrest like he was checking if it was real. It was. He opened his backpack and took out his model airplane, a 787 Dreamliner made of silver metal. His dad had given it to him when he turned 7. He placed it gently on the tray table and stared at it for a while. Across the aisle, a tall man in a charcoal business suit was already seated, typing rapidly on a tablet. He glanced at Emery briefly, gave a curt nod, then went back to his work. No smile, no words. Emery didn't mind. He was used to being the only kid in the room. Still, a part of him had hoped someone would say, "That's a cool plane," or "Is this your first time flying first class instead?" Silence settled around him like a second seatbelt. 10 minutes passed. Passengers began filling the rest of the cabin. Quiet conversations floated overhead. A couple in their 50s asked for extra champagne. A young woman in designer sunglasses requested headphones, even though she hadn't even sat down yet. And then Carla Voss boarded the plane. She walked in briskly, clipboard in hand, expression fixed, not tired, not pleasant, just efficient. She moved like someone who didn't expect to be questioned. Her uniform was immaculate, navy with silver trim, a crisp name tag pinned to her chest. Her blonde hair was pulled tightly into a bun, not a strand out of place. She began walking down the aisle, checking names, glancing briefly at faces. When she reached 3A, she stopped. Emery looked up and smiled politely. "Hi." She looked at him. Really looked. Her eyes dropped to his name tag, then to the plane model on his tray table, then back to his face. "This is first class," she said. Her tone wasn't rude. Exactly. But it wasn't welcoming either. "I know," Emery replied. She held out her hand. "Boarding pass, please." Emery handed it over, still smiling. Carla read it, her brow furrowed, her lips tightened. "You're Emery Duvall." "Yes, ma'am." She held the ticket for a few seconds longer than necessary. Then she looked at him again. "You're traveling alone." He nodded. "With who my dad booked it," Emery explained. He's not on this flight. I'm going to see my aunt in London." She checked her clipboard again. Flipped a page, checked again. A small pause, then a frown. "You weren't on the printed manifest." "Oh," Emery said softly, "but I checked in at the counter. And Julia from Youth Travel helped me get here." Carla's voice stayed flat. Her eyes didn't blink. "I'll have to verify this. Stay seated." She turned and walked toward the front galley without another word. Emery sat still. Very still. He looked out the window. Clouds were already shifting over the runway. The world outside moved so fast. Inside, he suddenly felt like time had slowed. 10 minutes passed. No one came back. The man across the aisle was now watching him out of the corner of his eye. A different couple glanced over, whispering softly. Emery swallowed. His fingers tapped against the tray table. Was he in the wrong seat? He looked down at his pass again. C3A. It was right there. It hadn't changed. Why was she acting like he didn't belong? Another 5 minutes. Then Carla returned. No smile, no apology. "I've spoken with the crew lead," she said. "You're not showing up on our digital list. That means either your ticket was entered wrong or there's a mistake." She paused, looked at the pass again, then at him. "This says first class," she added. "Are you sure this isn't someone else's ticket?" Now Emery said quietly, "It's mine." She sighed, loudly. "Just wait here. Don't touch anything." She turned again and left. This time, she took the boarding pass with her. Emery stared at the seat in front of him. The model plane on the tray table rattled slightly as turbulence brushed the aircraft. Something inside his chest tightened. He hadn't done anything wrong. He knew that. He followed every rule. And yet he could feel the walls of the cabin closing in around him. Carla Voss stood in the galley, staring at the torn corner of a napkin she didn't remember picking up. Her fingers worked it absent-mindedly, twisting it over and over while the digital passenger manifest blinked softly on her tablet screen. Seat 3A empty, no name, no record, no match. And yet, that boy, the one with the navy shirt and the model airplane, sat there like he belonged. She leaned against the metal counter, the smell of reheated breakfast trays and citrus hand wipes thick in the air. A younger flight attendant, Ava, entered the galley behind her. "Need help with something?" Ava asked. Carla didn't look up. "There's a kid in 3A. He's not in the system." Ava frowned. "Was he pre-boarded?" "He says he's flying alone. Give me a first-class ticket." "Checked." Carla nodded. "It looked real, but no ID, no guardian, and his name isn't in my list." Ava shrugged. "Could be a glitch, or a manual entry from a corporate block. Happens sometimes." "Still," Carla said, her voice flat, "it doesn't feel right." She didn't say what she meant, didn't say what really unsettled her. It wasn't just that he didn't show up. It was the way he looked at her, calm, confident, like he expected to be treated the same as every other person in that section. Like he didn't realize how expensive that seat was. Like he didn't understand who usually sat there. She hated that feeling, that dissonance. Carla had done this job for 18 years. She knew who her passengers were the moment they stepped on board, knew who got upgraded, who had miles, who paid full fare. That boy didn't fit. And for some reason, that irritated her. Back in the cabin, Emery sat still. The hum of the plane blurred around him, but his thoughts were sharp, focused. He kept his hands folded in his lap. He didn't want to cause trouble, but a part of him wanted to go after her, ask for his ticket back, prove it was his. He looked over at his backpack on the floor, zipped tight. He hadn't even touched his snacks. A flight attendant passed with a tray of water and asked if he wanted a drink. He shook his head. The man across the aisle was still watching, subtly, but it was there. The glance, the shift, the not-quite stare that said, "I see you. I'm still deciding what to think about you." Emery looked back out the window. Clouds stretched endlessly beneath the wings. He couldn't tell where the sky ended and the world began. He tried to breathe deeply, the way his mom taught him when he was nervous. It helped. A little. Then Carla returned. No smile. No tray. Just her and a folder. She leaned slightly toward him. Not kneeling, not softening. "Okay, I spoke to the flight supervisor. You're not in our manifest. There's no digital confirmation, no name on the seat allocation." Emery blinked. "But my dad booked it. He printed it." She nodded slowly. "People make mistakes," she said. "I'm sure your father meant to buy the right ticket. But things can get entered wrong. Mistakes happen. But it wasn't wrong." Carla exhaled. "Sweetheart, listen. There are a lot of people on this flight, and only so many first-class seats. Sometimes, when we find errors, we have to make changes. It's not personal." She reached into the folder and pulled out a new boarding slip. "This is a seat in the main cabin. 27C. It's still by a window." Emery didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stared at the paper. "You'll be more comfortable there," she said. "I'm comfortable here," he said quietly. A beat of silence passed. Carla's jaw tensed. "This isn't up for debate," she said. "Take your things and follow me." She reached down, touched the model plane on his tray table, moved it aside. Her fingers brushed the corner of the tray table, and then in one clean motion, She pulled the original boarding pass from the folder in her arm, held it up in front of him, and tore it in two. The sound was sharp, clean. It echoed louder than it should have in that silent cabin. A sharp intake of breath came from behind her. Someone stood. Another passenger gasped. Emery froze. His eyes locked on the torn paper falling to the carpet. He couldn't move, couldn't even blink. Carla straightened her back. "You can come with me now, or I can call the air marshal, but you will move." She said it softly, but there was no mistaking the threat behind it. Emery's throat tightened. His fingers trembled. Why was this happening? What had he done? He wanted to call his dad, but the Wi-Fi wasn't connected yet. He thought of standing up, thought of walking quietly to the back. Maybe it wasn't worth it. Maybe sitting there wasn't worth this much attention. But then someone spoke. Not loud, not aggressive, just firm. "You didn't have to do that." Everyone turned. It was Mr. Sinclair, the older man across the aisle. His voice was quiet, but his posture was strong. "That was unnecessary," he said. "That boy showed you a valid ticket, and you just humiliated him." Carla's face flushed. "Sir, this doesn't concern you." "It does," Sinclair said, "because now we're watching." Behind her, another phone lifted. Someone was recording. A third voice joined. "Yeah, that was a little much." Carla looked down, and for the first time, she hesitated. Something shifted in the air. Not a rebellion, but a reckoning. She didn't respond. She turned on her heel and walked back to the galley, this time with tighter shoulders. Her steps clipped, and in her chest, a single thought circled. What if she had just made a very big mistake? The engines droned steadily as the cabin lights shifted to dim. First class had settled into an uneasy quiet. The glow from personal reading lamps cast long shadows on faces that once relaxed, now held tension. Every passenger felt it, but few could name it yet. Emery sat in seat 3A, his eyes fixed on the torn remains of his boarding pass fluttering on the floor. He tucked the model airplane back into his backpack and stared at his lap. His chest ached, as though the cabin pressure had turned inward. He had done nothing wrong, yet here he was, feeling every pair of eyes on him. Behind him, muffled voices rose. A mother clutched her child's hand. A businessman lowered his newspaper. A flight attendant hovered nearby. Carla Voss leaned against the galley door, arms folded, her face pale and drawn. For a moment, it looked as though she might apologize. Then she stiffened and turned away. Emery closed his eyes. Breathing in measured counts. 1, 2, 3. He thought of his father's advice to stay calm and polite. He wished his father were here, but he was hundreds of miles below, safely grounded in Chicago, waiting for the call that his son had arrived. The thought flickered like lightning across his mind. Suddenly, the cabin door burst open. A flight marshal stepped in, eyes scanning quickly. Another followed. They were tense, alert. The passengers glanced up, uncertain. Then a tall figure appeared behind them. Marcus Duvall. He moved down the aisle like gravity had shifted in his favor. People instinctively made space, yielding the aisle without question. Around them, the cabin fell silent again. Marcus knelt beside Emery, whispering fiercely so only his son could hear. "Stay calm. Stay here." He slipped a finger under his son's chin, lifting his gaze toward him. Emery nodded, voice caught in his throat. Carla emerged from the galley, eyes wide. The rest of the crew held back. The flight marshal watched Carla, then looked at Marcus. He recognized him. Marcus Duvall, The CEO of Meridian Skies Airlines, the man who built the very plane they were on. Carla's jaw clenched. She swallowed hard, as if deciding between defiance and apology. She chose defiance. "He's not on my manifest," she said, voice trembling. "I had to remove him." Marcus looked at his son, then met Carla's gaze. His expression was calm, but something in his eyes sharpened, like flint striking steel. "You tore up his boarding pass," Marcus said quietly, "in front of everyone." He nodded toward the passengers holding phones, cameras silently recording. Carla glanced away. Her throat bobbed. "Protocol," she whispered. "He wasn't cleared." "Protocol," Marcus repeated. "Your protocol is to verify a ticket before tearing it in half." He lifted the torn edges between his fingers. "You failed." Carla's face went pale. She opened her mouth, closed it. She tried again. "Sir, I'm just doing my job." "Your job," Marcus said, "is to serve our customers with respect." He rose slowly, towering over her. "I want you to apologize to my son." His voice was low. It reverberated around the cabin in the hush. Carla's eyes flicked to Emery. She saw the boy's small frame trembling. She saw the model airplane painted silver in his lap. She saw the confusion and hurt in his dark eyes. Her lips quivered. She cleared her throat. She stepped forward. "I'm sorry," she stammered, voice barely audible. "Emery, I made a mistake." Emery looked up. His chest tightened. For 2 weeks he had prepared for excitement and wonder. Instead, he felt humiliation. But now, hearing her apology, he felt something else. Relief. A fragile warmth. Carla's apology hung in the air like mist. A man in the back stood and offered his hand. Another passenger nodded in approval. The cabin exhaled, but Marcus was not done. He turned to the marshal. "Please escort her to the crew quarters," he said. "She'll remain there until we land." Carla nodded numbly. She let the marshal guide her away. Before she disappeared into the galley, she paused, looked back at Emery. The apology in her eyes was genuine, but the fear still lingered. The cabin felt lighter after she left. Soft chatter resumed. A flight attendant began handing out water. A steward hovered near Emery's seat. Marcus knelt again. "You okay?" he asked gently. Emery nodded, tears brimming. "I did nothing wrong." "No," Marcus said softly. "You did everything right." He pressed the torn ticket into his son's hand. The edges were jagged, but Marcus had taped them together. "Keep this," he said. "A reminder never to let anyone tell you that you don't belong." Emery clutched it against his heart. Behind them, Marcus straightened, smoothing his suit. He glanced down the cabin. The passengers watched him with a mixture of relief and wonder. Some had tears. Some had phones still recording. Most simply sat quietly, as if witnessing something rare. A gentle humming rose from the engines. The plane cut through air like a blade. Outside the window, clouds drifted in silver ribbons across a pale blue sky. A flight attendant offered Emery a snack tray, a plate of fruit, cheese cubes, crackers. He took it, still quiet, still processing. The marshal returned to his position near the galley. Carla remained inside, unseen. Emery could still feel her apology echoing in his mind. Marcus turned back to his son. "We're going to finish this flight," he said, "as a family." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out 2 boarding passes. One was Emery's original repaired, taped. The other was his own first-class ticket, fresh and untouched. He handed it to Emery. "Come sit with me for the rest of the trip," he said. "We'll have dinner together." Emery looked at him, eyes bright. He nodded fiercely. Marcus helped him to his feet. They walked together up the aisle, side by side. Passengers smiled. Some nodded. It felt like the cabin shifted, reshaped by their presence. They settled into seats in the center of the cabin, 3D and 3E. The seats were side by side. Emery's heart fluttered with a new hope. He felt his father's hand on his shoulder, solid and reassuring. The flight attendant who had welcomed him at the door returned, offering menus and water. She gave Emery a small, sympathetic smile. He smiled back. A hush fell again, but it was different this time. Less fear, more anticipation, a communal sense that something extraordinary had happened. The cabin lights brightened slightly, inviting conversation. A gentle chime sounded as the seatbelt signs flicked off. Emery opened the menu, his hand steady. Marcus unbuckled and stretched his legs. They talked quietly about the sky, about the rest of the flight, about London and the bridges and the gray skies over Heathrow. Emery took a sip of his ginger ale, feeling ethereal. He had been torn down. He had been lifted up. He had felt shame and pride and love all in a span of minutes. Marcus looked out the window at the clouds beneath them. He felt a deep sadness for what his son had endured, and a fierce pride for the boy who had sat through it without losing his calm. He pressed his son's hand. "You did great," he said. Emery leaned into his father's side. "I know I belong," he said. "Yes," Marcus replied. "You and everyone else on this plane." His voice grew firmer. "And I intend to make sure they all know it." The engines hummed on. The plane soared on. Above the clouds, they found peace. The wheels touched ground with a gentle jolt. A soft vibration ran through the cabin as the pilot announced our descent into London Heathrow. The seatbelt signs glowed and the engine's hum softened. Outside the window, layers of gray clouds parted just enough to reveal the patchwork of runways and terminal roofs. Marcus Duvall straightened in his seat and offered Emery a reassuring smile. Emery's heart pounded with relief and lingering adrenaline. He glanced around first class. Some passengers quietly exchanged glances as if sharing a secret. Others stared out the window, pretending not to notice the small boy and his father. A flight attendant came by to collect trays and blankets. She paused at Marcus's row. Her eyes flicked to Emery. She cleared her throat. "Mr. Duvall, would you like any assistance disembarking together?" she asked softly. Marcus nodded. "Yes, please. We'd like to go now." She offered a polite nod and began collecting their things. Marcus lifted Emery's backpack and model plane. Emery blinked back tears of gratitude. They stood and followed the flight attendant down the aisle. Carla Voss watched them pass from the galley doorway. Her face was a blank mask, but there was something unreadable in her eyes. Embarrassment, perhaps, or guilt, or maybe fear. The cabin door slid open and a wave of cool air washed over them. The bustle of Heathrow enveloped them immediately. Passengers stretched, gathered personal items, and waited patiently for the forward exit. Marcus guided Emery toward the jet bridge. At its entrance, a small crowd of news crews waited beyond a cordon of airport security. Cameras flickered and microphones bobbed on extendable stands. Reporters in suits and turtlenecks leaned in, pens poised over notepads. Emery's hand tightened around his father's. He felt a pang of anxiety at the sudden attention. Marcus gently squeezed his hand back. "It's okay," he whispered. "Just follow me." They stepped onto the jet bridge. The cameras all snapped at once. Bright lights flashed. A cacophony of voices rose. Reporters shouted questions. Microphones thrust forward. Mr. Duvall, can you comment on the incident with a flight attendant? Will your son press charges? Are you satisfied by the apology? Marcus stepped forward calmly. He held Emery just behind him so that the boy's small face would not be overwhelmed by the lights. Marcus raised one hand in a gentle wave that glowed under the press cameras. "Good morning," he said in a clear, steady voice. "My name is Marcus Duvall. Yes, I own Meridian Skies Airlines, but today I stand before you simply as a father." The microphones bobbed eagerly. "My son Emery was seated in first class today." Marcus continued. "He presented a valid ticket for seat 3A. He did nothing wrong. He was humiliated when the ticket was torn up by an employee of my own airline. That is unacceptable." Flashbulbs popped. Reporters scribbled. A hush fell as they listened. Marcus kept his voice calm but firm. "I have asked for a full apology from the staff involved. I have asked for an immediate review of all discrimination complaints we have received. And I have promised my son and every passenger that no one in Meridian Skies will be treated as less than they deserve." A microphone leaned closer. "Will the flight attendant be disciplined?" Marcus glanced at Emery, who stared straight ahead with wide eyes. He knelt down on one knee, steadying himself on the metal floor. He looked his son in the eye. "She has been removed from duty pending investigation," Marcus said softly, "and I will ensure that proper action is taken according to our policies and our values." He stood and turned back to the press. "My son belongs in every place he is paid to be just like every other person of any color or background." Another barrage of questions followed as they stepped off the bridge and into the terminal. Security ushered them swiftly past the cameras. Reporters shouted louder, but a line of airport staff formed behind Marcus to guide them away. Once they were clear of the crowd, they entered a quieter corridor. Emery exhaled in relief. Marcus wrapped an arm around his son's shoulders. "You did great," he said quietly. Emery nodded, his voice catching. "I'm glad. You were there." They walked past a bank of monitors displaying departure boards, flight times, and news feeds. One screen showed a rolling news headline: "Airline CEO's son humiliated mid-flight discrimination scandal rocks industry." The story scrolled across in bold letters as a looped video clip showed the moments when the ticket was torn. Emery paused to watch. His reflection wavered in the screen. He saw himself small and frightened, and then he saw his father's determined face. A surge of pride lifted his chest. Lena Duvall waited for them at the end of the corridor. She stepped forward and wrapped Emery in a tight hug. His small frame shook as he buried his face in her coat. "I'm so sorry this happened to you," she whispered. "It's not your fault," Emery mumbled. Lena nodded against his hair. "No, it's not. But together we'll make sure this matters." They continued down the hall toward the arrivals lounge. Pressed between rows of seats and potted plants was a waiting area for VIP passengers. A sleek black car idled just outside the glass doors. Marcus opened the doors for them. Reporters still hovered beyond the glass. He motioned for a security guard to hold them back. The guard nodded and stepped forward with firm authority. As they crossed onto the sidewalk, a light rain began to fall. London's sky was mottled gray, reflecting the mood of the moment. A taxi pulled away. A group of business travelers hurried by under umbrellas. Yet for Marcus and Emery, the world felt narrowed to the black sedan waiting for them. Marcus escorted them to the back seat. Lena slid in beside Emery. The door clicked shut. The car pulled into motion. Emery stared out the tinted window. Rain droplets raced each other down the glass. He traced a droplet's path with his finger. "I want to write about this," he said suddenly, voice soft. Lena looked at him through the rearview mirror. Right. Yeah, Emery said. In school, they asked us to keep a journal. I think this could help other kids. Marcus glanced back, his expression proud. That's a great idea, he said. Truth helps change things. Emery nodded, a determined look coming into his dark eyes. I don't ever want anyone else to feel like they don't belong. Lena reached over and squeezed his hand. And they won't, she said, because you spoke up. The car slid through traffic toward the city center. Neon signs blinked through wet pavement reflections. The rhythm of windshield wipers matched the soft patter of rain. Marcus turned off onto a quieter street. The lines of taxis and buses receded. Emery leaned his head against his mother's shoulder. Lena brushed his hair back and smiled down at him. Ready for a hot chocolate? She asked. Emery closed his eyes. Yes, please. Marcus glanced at the driver in the front mirror. Let's find the coziest cafe, he said. As the city lights blurred past, the family felt a fleeting moment of peace. But they all knew this was only the beginning. The stories, the interviews, the tweets, the boardroom meetings, everything would come next. Yet in that moment, riding through a rainy London street, they were simply a family, safe together, united by truth and the shared promise that they belonged. And one clear, strong voice in the cabin had made all the difference. Sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Meridian Skies Airline's headquarters. The glass walls glinted off the rows of sleek desks and polished marble floors. In the heart of the building, behind locked doors and silent hallways, was the boardroom, a place where decisions shaped the future of the airline and the lives of its passengers. Marcus Duvall stepped into that room wearing a tailored navy suit that matched his calm resolve. His tie was straight, his shoulders were squared, yet beneath his composed exterior, his mind raced. He replayed every moment of the flight in his head, the tier of paper, Emery's hurt face, and the hushed murmurs of the first-class cabin. Today, he would demand accountability. Good morning, everyone, he began as the board members settled into high-backed leather chairs around the long oak table. The murmurs died immediately. Graham Keller, the senior investor with steel-gray hair and a reputation for pragmatism, looked at Marcus with a cool curiosity. Thank you for calling this meeting on such short notice, Graham said. A younger board member, Elaine Cho, gave Marcus an encouraging nod. She had been silent at first, but had quietly supported his plan for transparency. Marcus took a breath. As you all saw, an incident occurred on Flight 4087. He said, My son was humiliated by one of our employees. The boarding pass was valid. He was first class. And yet he was removed from his seat in front of a cabin full of paying customers. He paused. The weight of that memory pressed on him. He looked each member in the eye. That shouldn't happen ever. Graham leaned back. It's unfortunate, but mistakes happen. We have protocols. We've placed the flight attendant on leave and issued an apology. Marcus's gaze sharpened. An apology is not enough. This was discrimination. We cannot pretend it was a simple error. We must address the system that allowed it. A murmur rose from the table. One of the older members, Harold Stevens, cleared his throat. Marcus, we all agree discrimination is wrong, but airing every complaint publicly will damage the brand. Our stock is already volatile after the media coverage. Marcus nodded. I understand the concern, but let me ask you this. What damage is done by pretending nothing happened? What message do we send to passengers who experience bias at our gates and never have a CEO's son to defend them? Silence hung heavy. Graham exchanged a glance with another member. Then he leaned forward. So you're proposing we open our internal records every complaint? Every incident from the last 5 years? Marcus didn't flinch. Yes, all of it. Transparency. Public disclosure. We investigate. We hold people accountable. And we fix what's broken. Another board member, Priya Singh, folded her hands. That's a bold move. It could lead to lawsuits. It could expose patterns that take years to remedy. Marcus nodded again. Which is exactly why we need to act now. We have to own our mistakes before someone else leaks them and controls the narrative. Elaine Cho spoke up, her voice steady. I agree with Marcus. We have to lead with integrity. If we don't, we'll lose trust forever. Graham cleared his throat. Integrity is important, but so is profitability. We can't sacrifice one for the other. Marcus leaned toward Graham. Trust is the foundation of loyalty. When customers trust us, they stay with us through any hiccup. Profits follow trust. He sat back as murmurs fluttered around the table. A few nods, a few skeptical looks. The tension was palpable. Then Graham spoke again. What about the flight attendant? Carla Voss. You said you'd ensure proper action. What does that look like? Marcus took a deep breath. Meridian Skies has a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. She will be terminated if the investigation confirms bias. But I also want to offer her a chance at restorative justice, training, mentorship, a path forward if she's willing. Silence. Carla Voss had been on leave. No one had heard from her. No one knew how she felt or what she planned to do. Harold Stevens tapped his pen on the table. Restorative justice. For someone who ripped up a child's ticket in front of half a plane? Marcus looked directly at Harold. Yes, because accountability isn't just punishment. It's correction. It's learning. And we want every employee to learn. He let his words hang. The boardroom seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Graham spoke softly. You're taking a gamble, a necessary one. Marcus replied. He pressed a button on the conference phone. The screen lit up. This is Marcus. Begin the public disclosure plan. Over the next 10 minutes, he outlined a 3-phase strategy. 1. Phase 1. Release a statement acknowledging systemic bias. Apologize to every affected passenger. And name an external audit team. 2. Phase 2. Publish the audit findings, redacted only for privacy, and mandate training across all levels. 3. Phase 3. Introduce a Chief Equity Officer role and a real-time bias reporting hotline, plus quarterly public updates. As he spoke, he saw some board members jotting notes, some frowning, some nodding in tentative agreement. When he finished, Elaine spoke up. This is the start of a cultural shift. It's what many employees have been asking for quietly, but didn't know how to push. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. We build a culture where respect isn't optional, where every ticket, every passenger, every person matters. Graham placed his hands on the table. All right, let's vote. Each board member cast their vote, some with reservations, some eagerly. When the final tally came in, a majority supported Marcus's plan. 2 abstained, 1 voted against. The motion passed. A collective exhale seemed to ripple through the room. Marcus stood and extended his hand to Elaine. Thank you. She shook it firmly. Thank you for leading. Graham remained seated. He met Marcus's eye. You've set a high bar. Let's make sure the execution matches the promise. Marcus nodded. It will. After the meeting, Marcus walked to the glass wall overlooking the runway. A carriage of A350s waited for departure. He thought of Emery on that flight, sitting alone with his model airplane. He thought of the torn ticket pinned to his son's jacket as proof of belonging and proof of injustice. He felt the weight of responsibility settling on him again. He pressed a hand against the cool glass. He was the man behind the wings, the architect of an airline that carried millions across the sky. And now, he would also be the catalyst for its transformation. Behind him, the boardroom door opened. Lena stepped in, her heels clicking softly. She crossed to him and slipped her hand into his. "How did it go?" she asked quietly. Marcus turned. "We have a plan." She frowned. "Is it enough?" He looked back at the planes. "It's a start." She squeezed his hand. "Our son will be proud." He nodded. "He already is." They stood together, watching the jets taxi. Above them, the sky was clear and endless. The same sky that Emery would cross again soon, but next time. He would do so knowing he truly belonged. The sun had set behind London's skyline by the time the Duvalls arrived at the Crowne Plaza for their first night in the city. The lobby lights gleamed off polished marble floors, and quiet chatter drifted from the bar. A pianist played a soft melody in the corner. It felt calm, almost surreal, after the chaos of the airport. But calm can be deceptive. Marcus, Lena, and Emery settled into their adjoining rooms. Emery's door clicked shut behind him, and he leaned against it for a moment, breathing deeply. He felt the weight of headlines chasing him across continents. He kissed the model airplane keychain hanging from his backpack, his talisman through everything, down the hall. Marcus sat at a small desk in his suite, laptop open. His screen glowed with news alerts, social media feeds, and urgent emails. Lena paused in the doorway. "They're calling you a hero," she said softly, worry lining her voice. Marcus didn't look up. "Some call me that. Others say I'm exploiting my son for publicity. And there are worse things." He tapped open a video clip of the cabin incident. It played again, the sharp rip of paper. Emery's stunned face. Carla's horror. The clip had millions of views worldwide. Comments exploded by the second. Many praised Marcus's intervention and demanded systemic change. Others accused him of nepotism and grandstanding. Lena sat beside him. "They don't know the whole story." Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. "Maybe they never will. But I have to focus on what we control our response." He opened his email to a message titled Urgent Investor Backlash. It was from Graham Keller. Marcus's fingers hesitated over the trackpad. He clicked it open. "Dear Marcus," the email began, "I support your transparency plan, but we must prepare for a shareholder revolt. Some major stakeholders believe you've gone too far. They view the public disclosures as a direct hit to our bottom line. Be advised they are exploring a vote of no confidence. We need a strategy to shore up support." Marcus read the rest. Legal teams, PR firms, crisis consultants. He closed the email and swallowed. Lena reached for his hand. "We'll face it." Marcus nodded. "After we address the media tomorrow, I'll call an emergency board meeting. But tonight, Emery needs dinner." He stood and followed Lena down the hall to Emery's room. Emery sat on the bed, journal open on his lap. He was writing in a careful hand. Lena peeked inside. "What are you writing?" Emery looked up. "My thoughts. I want to tell what happened, but from my point of view." He turned the journal to show her the page. At the top, in neat letters, he had written what it feels like to be torn apart. Lena's eyes brimmed. "That's brave." Emery shrugged. "I don't know if anyone will read it, but it helps me understand." Marcus smiled at his son's resilience. He ruffled Emery's hair. I'm proud of you. They ordered room service steak and mashed potatoes for Marcus, a chicken sandwich for Lena, and a bowl of fruit and yogurt for Emery. The knock at the door felt gentle after the roar of cameras. They ate quietly, trading small observations. Emery described the rain on the car window. Lena recounted the pianist in the lobby. Marcus monitored his emails discreetly, then set the laptop aside. Tomorrow, he said, we'll face the spin cycle, but tonight we just have dinner. Emery nodded, finishing his yogurt. What does spin cycle mean? Marcus chuckled. It's what you call the media tornado after a big story. Everything gets twisted in different directions. Emery frowned. I just want the truth out. It will be, Lena assured him. In time. The next morning, the hotel conference room buzzed with cameras and reporters. A podium stood at the front, backed by a Meridian Skies logo. Marcus stepped up, Lena and Emery to his sides. Flashbulbs popped. The hum of microphones rose. Marcus adjusted the lapel microphone. He glanced at Emery, who stood tall, clutching his journal. Marcus placed a hand on his shoulder. Good morning, he began. His voice was clear, steady. Thank you all for being here on short notice. Reporters clustered forward. A woman in a red blazer thrust her microphone forward. Mr. Duvall, what do you hope to accomplish with the public audit? Marcus nodded. We owe it to our customers and employees to confront systemic bias. We will publish all complaint records from the last 5 years and take appropriate action on each one. A reporter called out, but won't that expose the company to lawsuits and further damage profits? He met the question head on. Transparency may bring challenges, but hiding mistakes only deepens mistrust. I believe in building an airline that reflects our values: integrity, respect, and inclusion. A tall man asked, will you personally apologize to all affected passengers? Marcus looked at Emery again. I will personally write to each passenger who experienced discrimination. I will listen to their stories and ensure we learn from them. The cameras clicked. Reporters scribbled furiously. Emery cleared his throat. He stepped forward, journal in hand. I want to say something, too. The room hushed. Lena squeezed his hand. Emery took a breath. I'm Emery Duvall. I was that boy on the plane. I wasn't angry when they tore up my ticket. I was sad. I felt like I was invisible. I know my dad could make things right, but I want to help make things right for everyone. His voice trembled, but he continued. No one should feel alone up here, he said, looking at the rows of cameras. If you see someone being treated unfairly, speak up. A reporter asked, how do you feel now that so many people have seen your story? Emery thought for a moment. I feel stronger, not because of the attention, but because I know what's right, and because I know people believe me. Lena's eyes glistened. Marcus stood proud, but his expression softened with paternal care. After the press conference, they returned to their rooms. Marcus's phone buzzed constantly. Lena's phone lit up with supportive texts. Emery's journal lay open on the desk, ready for his next entry. In the hallway, the hotel staff whispered and pointed. Guests paused to congratulate Lena. Others offered sympathetic smiles. Later, they gathered in the lounge for lunch. A woman approached Emery. My son saw your video, she said. He said you're brave. Emery smiled shyly. Thank you. She handed him a small card with her social media handle. I'd like to read your journal when you post it. Emery's chest warmed. I'll share it. Back at headquarters, the boardroom buzzed again. Marcus dialed in via secure video. Graham appeared on screen. flanked by advisors. Support is shaky, Graham warned. Investors are restless. Marcus took a breath. Then we show them results. We start the audit today. We set milestones. We demonstrate progress. Elaine Cho, seated beside Graham, nodded. Employees are rallying behind this. Our brand will recover if we follow through. Marcus sat forward. Then let's begin. Phase 1 kicks off this afternoon. I want external auditors in. Communications drafted. Passenger outreach numbers charted. He glanced at the time. It was nearly dinner. He had commitments with local regulators in London about bias reporting mechanisms and staff training standards. He looked at Lena, who sat with him on the conference call from their suite. For Emery's sake, he said quietly, let's make sure this matters. At home, nights were sometimes the hardest. Once the lights went out, the spinning headlines and investor threats felt louder in the dark, but Marcus felt fortified by purpose. Lena lay awake beside him, hand in his. Emery slept peacefully between them, dreaming of airplanes. In the quiet, Marcus thought of every passenger who had felt invisible. He thought of Emery's resolve. He thought of the moment he tore open that cabin's silence with one calm voice. He pressed his hand against Lena's. We're doing the right thing, he whispered. She squeezed back. Always. And somewhere above the clouds, in the vast openness of the sky, the engines of change roared to life. The morning sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Meridian Skies executive suite. Marcus Duvall stood alone by the glass, watching jets taxi on the runway below. His reflection looked back at him calm, determined, but shadowed with concern. Today would be the toughest test of his leadership yet. In the conference room behind him, the board had reconvened. Graham Keller presided over the long walnut table, eyes sharp beneath his silver brows. Elaine Cho sat at one end, her laptop open, eyebrows knitted. Other directors were arrayed around them, notebooks and tablets at the ready. Marcus turned from the window and joined them at the head of the table. His gaze swept the room. No one smiled. Thank you for making time at short notice. He began. Phase 1 of our transparency plan launched yesterday. We've received overwhelming support from employees and customers, yet I understand there are concerns. Graham cleared his throat. Support comes with backlash. Marcus, some investors are threatening a vote of no confidence. They claim the public disclosures have hurt our share price. They say you went too far too fast. Elaine raised a hand. Our internal surveys show employee morale soaring. Our net promoter score improved. We're building brand loyalty that lasts. Graham waved a hand. Surveys don't pay dividends. Investors worry that ongoing lawsuits and negative headlines will crush profits. A younger director, Selena Morris, interjected. Graham, we can't ignore reputation capital. If we lose trust, we lose customers for good. Marcus folded his hands calmly. I agree, which is why Phase 2 must move swiftly. We must not only disclose, but also demonstrate action. I want a detailed timetable for bias training, leadership workshops, and passenger outreach. Graham's voice dropped low. And meanwhile, the smear campaign is gathering momentum. There are bloggers dredging up past complaints. They're insinuating that your son isn't who he pretends to be. One fringe site claims he misbehaved on a school trip. Another says you only care because it's your child. Marcus's heart tightened. He glanced at Elaine. She looked grim. This is expected, he said. Our opponents are playing dirty. Selena took a deep breath. We need a counter-narrative. We need authentic voices. Employees who can testify to our values. Passengers who can share real stories. Marcus nodded. I've arranged interviews with several people who face discrimination. I want them on record. I want to humanize the issue. Graham leaned forward. All that might work on social media. But the board's vote is in 2 weeks. We have to reassure stakeholders that you won't drag the airline into a protracted culture war. Marcus held his ground. This is not a culture war. It's about basic respect and dignity. If we sell tickets without guaranteeing a safe experience free of bias, we're failing our mission. A murmur rippled through the room. Graham tapped a pen against the table. And what about Carla Voss? Any update on her? Marcus spoke softly. She has requested to return under the Restorative Justice Program. She admits she was wrong and wants to make amends. Elaine's eyes widened. Really? Marcus nodded. She's undergone implicit bias training. She's met with a mentor. She's drafted a public apology. Selina frowned. That's admirable. But do our passengers want her back serving them? Marcus paused. That's up to them. We'll let the public decide. It's part of our commitment to transparency. Graham sighed. You're gambling on redemption. Some will never forgive. Marcus met Graham's gaze. Then we'll prove them wrong. The boardroom door opened. Tasha Wren, head of HR, entered with a tablet in hand. She passed it to Marcus. Preliminary audit reports, she said. We've identified 25 incidents in the last 5 years that warrant review. We've already reached out to those passengers. Marcus scanned the list. Black passengers, brown passengers, women, older travelers. Each had a legitimate complaint: racial slurs, denied service, rude treatment. Some had been offered quiet settlements but never public acknowledgement. We will contact each one personally, Marcus said. I will write the letters myself. Graham set his jaw. This will cost millions. Are you prepared for that? Marcus exhaled. This is an investment in our future. We can't put a price on trust. Silence settled. Elaine tapped her pen. I move. We fully back Marcus's plan. We'll schedule passenger interviews, employee workshops, and public forums. We stand by his leadership. Graham closed his eyes for a moment before nodding reluctantly. Seconded. The vote passed unanimously. As the meeting broke, Selina approached Marcus. You sure about Carla? He met her gaze. I believe someone who admits fault and works to change is part of the solution. She nodded slowly. I hope you're right. In the hallway, Marcus found Tasha and Elaine huddled. Their expressions betrayed both relief and anxiety. I can't believe the board came around, Elaine whispered. Tasha wiped her brow. Now the real work begins. Marcus placed a hand on each of their shoulders. Thank you. Let's prove our critics wrong by doing what we said. Later that evening, Marcus found Carla waiting outside HR's conference room. She looked smaller than ever in her uniform, hands clasped tightly in front. He offered a gentle smile. Carla? She nodded, voice barely a whisper. Mr. Duvall. He gestured to a chair. Please sit. She sat and waited. I watched your apology, Marcus said. I saw your commitment to change. Her eyes brimmed. I'm sorry for what I did. I understand now how deeply I hurt him. I want to learn and do better. He paused. Restoration is not guaranteed. You must demonstrate ongoing accountability. Bi-monthly check-ins with Tasha. You'll mentor with our chief equity officer. Then we'll review. Her shoulders sagged. Yes. Thank you. He stood. You will be welcome when you're ready, but only if you continue learning. She nodded. voice firm, "I will." That night, Marcus returned to his suite. The city lights of London twinkled below. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and sat by the window. His phone buzzed again. Investor newsletters, scathing op-eds, social media threads, some praising, some condemning. He scrolled through facts and figures, then closed the app. He set the glass aside and dialed Lena. "Any word from home?" he asked. She smiled, voice warm. "Emery's asleep, but he left his journal on the desk. I read the last entry. It said, 'Even in the darkest turbulence, one voice can change the whole flight.'" Marcus closed his eyes. "That's my boy." Lena's voice softened. "He's right." He looked out at the night sky. The engines of change were roaring. The path would be rocky. But he believed in truth, in justice, in the power of one voice. He lifted his glass to the window, to one voice, and somewhere above the rain-slick streets of London, under a canopy of stars and city lights, the promise of transformation took flight. Emery stepped off the school bus on Monday morning, his backpack heavier than usual. The world around him felt different. The brick school building loomed larger. The chatter of classmates sounded louder. The laughter felt distant. Even the scent of autumn leaves on the playground seemed sharper somehow. He hugged his journal to his chest and walked toward the entrance. A cluster of kids stood by the bike racks. Some waved, others whispered. He could feel their eyes on him. He wondered if they saw the boy from the video or the 10-year-old he still was. Inside the hallway, his locker sat between two graffiti-scribbled doors. He opened it and placed his backpack inside. The torn boarding pass was tucked behind his textbooks, a jagged reminder of what had happened. He traced its edges with his finger, thinking of how it once proved he belonged. Now it felt fragile. His first class was math. He slid into his seat as Mrs. Allen started the lesson on fractions. Numbers and equations usually comforted him. Today, they felt abstract, distant. His mind kept drifting back to the cabin incident, his father's voice, the apology, and the storm of media coverage. Then he heard a whisper behind him. "Hey, airplane kid." He turned. Jason Miller, a boy from his homeroom, leaned against the desk, smirking. Another kid joined in. "Bet your dad got you that seat because he's rich," Jason said under his breath. "Hope you can do more than press record on your phone." Their tone made Emery's chest tighten. He forced himself to breathe slowly. He remembered his dad's advice: stay calm. Stay polite. Speak up when necessary. He whispered back. "I don't need to record. I was there." The bell rang. Mrs. Allen called on him to solve a fraction problem. He stood and walked to the board. For a moment, the world narrowed to chalk in his hand, numbers on the green slate, the quiet respect of solving something correctly. He wrote the answer neatly 3/4. Mrs. Allen nodded approvingly. "Well done." "Emery." He sat down, heart pounding but steady. At lunch, the cafeteria bustled with noise. Tables filled with kids eating pizza, trading stickers, laughing. Emery found his usual spot at the far end. He pulled out his journal and wrote, "Today I felt torn in two. One part is proud, one part is scared." A friend, Maya, waved at him from across the room. She held up a drawing Emery in a superhero cape, soaring above an airplane. She carried it over. "I made this for you," she said, placing it beside his tray. "You're my hero." Emery smiled, warmth spreading. He felt seen, not as a symbol, but as himself. "Thanks," he said softly. "That means a lot." She sat down and peered at his journal. "Are you okay?" He shrugged. "I'm trying." She nodded. "It's weird, isn't it? Everyone's talking about you like you're not real." He closed his journal. "Yeah, I just want to be me." She smiled. "You're the best you I know." He laughed quietly. "Thanks." Later that afternoon, in guidance counselor's office, Mrs. Phillips greeted him with her calm, gentle voice. "Emery, would you like to talk?" she asked. He sat down, fidgeting. He thought of writing in his journal here. Maybe he would. Instead, he looked at the patterned rug and took a deep breath. "I feel like I'm two people," he said quietly. "The me who just wants to build planes and laugh with friends, and the me everyone saw on TV, Mrs. Phillips nodded. "That makes sense. You're dealing with a lot public attention, media, and your own feelings." He looked up. "I don't know if I did the right thing by letting it go public." She leaned forward. "It wasn't your choice alone. You told the truth. That takes courage." He swallowed. "But what if people only see me as a symbol, not as a kid?" She smiled kindly. "Symbols can be powerful, but you're still you, and you deserve to be more than a symbol. You deserve to be a boy who feels safe and respected." He nodded, tears brimming. "I just want to be normal." "I understand," she said. "And it's okay to want that. You can ask for normal moments. You can set boundaries. This is your story." He exhaled. "Thanks. After school." Lena picked him up. They walked to the car in silence. The sky above was pale blue with streaks of pink. He stared up, thoughts tumbling. "Rough day?" Lena asked as he buckled in. He nodded. "Everyone's nice. Then not nice. Then nice again." She squeezed his shoulder. "Sometimes people say things when they don't understand. It's not your fault." He thought of Jason's smirk. "I just wish they'd see me." Lena glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Then you show them. One day at a time." He chewed his lip. "What if I mess up? You won't," she said firmly. "You're stronger than you know." He closed his eyes, leaning back. The car pulled onto the street. Houses with autumn leaves lined the road. He thought of his father's promise they would build something better. That evening, he sat at the kitchen table drawing story panels in his journal. Each panel showed a scene: the cabin, the tear, his father's face, the gallery of protesting phones. Then new panels: the apology, the boardroom, kids at school. He labeled the series Flight of Truth. Lena brought him hot chocolate. He took a sip. "Have you thought about sharing your journal online?" she asked. He stared at the steaming mug. "I want to, but I'm scared." "That's okay," she said. "You choose when you share." He nodded. "Maybe I'll just share one page, the part where I say no one should feel invisible." "That's a good start," Lena said. "Truth can be told in small steps." He smiled. "Like fractions?" Lena laughed softly. "Exactly." That night, Marcus called before Emery went to bed. He watched the younger boy's face appear on the tablet screen. "How was school?" Marcus asked. Emery shrugged. He didn't want to lie. "It was okay. Hard sometimes." Marcus nodded. "I know. You're doing great." They talked about airplanes and homework. Marcus reminded Emery that he could always step back if it felt too much. Emery listened, comforted. He missed his dad's steady presence, but he felt a new strength too born from telling the truth and standing up. He closed his journal before bed and placed it on his bedside table. Next to it sat the drawing Maya made. He turned off the lamp. In the dark, he whispered to himself, "I am more than a ticket. I am Emery Duvall." And in the quiet, that truth felt enough. The morning headlines hit like thunder. The hotel television blinked onto a breaking news banner. Online, alerts buzzed on every device. The story was no longer just Emery's torn ticket. A second video had surfaced overnight. It showed a gate agent at another airport refusing a black family their priority boarding. The agent's voice dripped with contempt as he muttered racist slurs, then turned away, laughing with a coworker. Marcus Duvall sat at his desk in the Crown Plaza Executive Lounge. He stared at the footage, jaw clenched. The video was grainy but undeniable. It had been shared by an anonymous whistleblower and already gone viral. Comments ranged from righteous outrage to demands for justice. Moments later, a push notification arrived from the Federal Aviation Administration. They were opening a formal investigation into Meridian Skies Airlines, citing systemic bias allegations. He felt his stomach tighten. Twice in 2 weeks. Once on his son's flight, and now this. It was a storm rising beyond control. Spectators called for resignations. Shareholders called emergency meetings. Activists organized online petitions. Journalists lined up statements demanding accountability. The crisis had leapt beyond his carefully structured transparency plan and into uncharted territory. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He owed it to every passenger to lead with truth and purpose. Calling his assistant, he scheduled an emergency board meeting for later that afternoon. Then he dialed Elaine Cho and Tasha Wren. They needed to mobilize the bias audit team immediately. He needed details. He needed a response. Down the hall in his suite, Lena stood by the window, watching rain fall over London's rooftops. She sensed the change in his posture when he returned. "What is it?" she asked softly. He showed her the video on his tablet. They watched in stunned silence. "This means more than one bad actor," Lena said quietly. "It means a culture problem." He nodded. "I know. And now FAA is involved. This is bigger than our public audit timeline." He paused. "We need to accelerate everything. We need to demonstrate swift action, or they will tear us apart." Lena moved closer and laid a hand on his arm. "You have the facts. You have the audits. You can prove you are doing the work." Her confidence bolstered him. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Tomorrow I will address the FAA. Tonight I need to prepare our statement. And feast of consequences we must gather." By mid-afternoon, the board members filed into the glass-walled room. Graham Keller looked grave. Elaine Cho sat beside him with her laptop open to legal briefs. Marcus greeted them, tension etched into his features. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice steady despite the crisis, "we have new evidence of discrimination within our ranks. A second video has emerged showing a gate agent's racist misconduct. The FAA has opened an inquiry. We cannot wait for the public audit to conclude." He laid the facts plainly. 2 incidents in 14 days. 25 complaints identified. Now a formal federal probe. Investors mold a leadership shake-up. Public trust precarious. He proposed a rapid action task force. Phase 1 had been disclosure. Phase 2 was reform. Now Phase 3 would be enforcement. He outlined immediate steps. All implicated employees suspended. A commission of external civil rights experts to guide the investigation. Mandatory bias training for all airport staff within 30 days. A public hotline for complaints and whistleblower confidentiality. He would testify before the FAA personally. Silence followed. Graham tapped his pen. "This is extraordinary," he said. Are we prepared for the financial impact? Marcus met his gaze. We are prepared for the moral imperative. Elaine Cho spoke up. Our employees support this. It will hurt our bottom line short term, but save us long term. We need to stand firm. The board voted overwhelmingly to implement the task force. The resolution passed with only one abstention. Marcus allowed himself a relieved breath. He had the mandate to act. That evening, Marcus returned to the hotel suite. Lena and Emery waited in the living area. Emery lay on the couch with his journal open, writing by lamplight. Lena poured tea. "You okay?" Emery asked. Looking up, his face was solemn but curious. Marcus knelt beside him. "I'm okay. It's just, there's more work to do." "You saw the gate agent video." Emery nodded. "It's awful. I didn't know there were so many people who feel they don't belong." His voice trembled. Marcus hugged him gently. "You did the right thing by speaking your truth. Now we need to speak for everyone else who didn't have a voice." Emery closed his journal. "I can help. I want to share my story and theirs." Lena smiled at Marcus with quiet pride. "He's right." Marcus ruffled Emery's hair. "Tomorrow I'll testify before the FAA. I want you there with me, if you're up for it." Emery's eyes widened. "Me? Your presence shows this is about more than numbers. It's about people. About you and that family, and every passenger." Emery exhaled. "Okay." They sat together in a small family circle as rain tapped softly on the window. Marcus felt a surge of resolve. This moment would define Meridian Skies. He would harness this crisis into transformation. The next morning, a temporary hearing room at Heathrow buzzed with reporters and government officials. A long table faced the panel of FAA investigators. Marcus and his legal counsel took seats on one side. Emery sat beside him, journal in lap. Lena stood at the back. The lead FAA investigator opened the hearing. "Mr. Duvall, today we examine your airline's record in response to these incidents. We expect full transparency." Marcus nodded. "Thank you. Meridian Skies stands ready to cooperate fully. We have launched an independent commission, suspended all implicated employees, and begun mandatory training. We will share all findings and commit to continuous external oversight." A government attorney pressed him on timelines and accountability measures. Marcus answered with clarity. He presented a comprehensive reform plan including third-party audits, public reporting quarterly, and a zero-tolerance code integrated into performance evaluations. Emery listened intently. When the attorney turned to him, Emery spoke clearly. "My name is Emery Duvall. I was that boy on Flight 4087. I'm here because I don't want anyone else to feel invisible. I forgive the gate agent who tore my ticket, but there are others who need to learn." His voice was quiet, but carried across the room. A hush fell. Cameras flashed. The FAA panel exchanged glances. Marcus sensed the shift. The emotional truth had cut through bureaucracy. The panel thanked them both and recessed to review the materials. As they left the room, reporters shouted questions. Emery answered simply that he believed in accountability. Marcus reiterated his dedication to rebuilding trust. Outside, Lena enveloped Emery in a hug. "You were amazing," she said. Emery smiled, relief shining in his eyes. He looked at his father. "We did it." Marcus kissed his forehead. "We started doing it." Back at the hotel, Marcus checked his messages. Social media threads lit up with support. Some critics remained. Fringe blogs continued to spread rumors about Emery's behavior at school. But now the discourse was more balanced. Protesters gathered outside Meridian Skies offices in solidarity. Politicians praised the swift cooperation. Airline partners offered to collaborate on best practices. Marcus sent a midnight message to the Independent Commission requesting accelerated reporting deadlines. He opened his email to scroll through positive messages from employees and passengers sharing their own stories. The weight seemed lighter. He shut his laptop and slipped into bed. Lena held him close. "You turned the crisis into leverage for change," she whispered. He kissed her. "We still have miles to go, but now we're flying in the right direction." And as he drifted to sleep, he thought of Emery's simple truth. One boy's voice in the cabin had become leverage that lifted an entire airline toward its better self. Morning light filtered through the hangar windows at Meridian Skies' private runway in London. Planes lined up like sentinels poised to take flight. Today was not a routine departure. Today marked the launch of the airline's new Equity and Ethics initiative. Marcus Duvall stood on the tarmac, feet planted firmly on the concrete apron. His suit jacket caught a gentle breeze. He could see Emery standing beside him, clutching the model Dreamliner they both cherished. Lena stood just behind, arms folded, her face calm but filled with pride. A small stage had been constructed near one of the gates. A podium bore the Meridian Skies logo alongside the tagline, "Equity above the clouds." A handful of passengers, employees, and media representatives filled the folding chairs. A film crew recorded every moment. Marcus stepped to the microphone. The hum of airplanes provided a low, steady backdrop. He paused, letting anticipation settle over the crowd. He glanced at Emery, who returned a nod. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice steady and warm. "Thank you for joining us on this runway, at the very heart of our operations. 2 weeks ago, my son Emery and I experienced firsthand the pain of discrimination at 36,000 feet. That moment shattered the illusion that our airline was immune to bias." He looked at Emery, whose dark eyes shone with determination. "We responded with transparency and action. We disclosed every discrimination complaint, both large and small. We launched independent audits. We placed accountability above all else. We listened to our employees and passengers." He let that sink in for a beat. "Today, we move from reaction to transformation. I am proud to announce the Equity and Ethics Initiative. This program will ensure that every employee, from gate agents to pilots, receives ongoing implicit bias education. Every complaint will be met with swift investigation and public reporting. We will hire a chief equity officer, supported by an advisory council of civil rights experts, to guide our policies. And we will establish a passenger advocacy hotline staffed by trained responders ready to act." He paused again. The engines of a nearby jet roared to life. A flight attendant handed Emery a small plaque engraved with the initiative's emblem. Emery handed it back to Marcus. "I would like to dedicate this program to every traveler who ever felt invisible," he said in a clear, confident voice. "No one should ever feel like they don't belong in the seat they paid for or the sky they dreamed of." A soft ripple of applause passed through the audience. Marcus looked around. This was the moment his son's voice became far more than a symbol. It became a catalyst for real change. But there was one more person who needed to hear this. He stepped aside and motioned toward the hangar doors. Carla Voss emerged, dressed in a simple suit, hair pulled back loosely. Her expression was contemplative, hopeful. She walked slowly to the stage, the crowd parting respectfully. Marcus extended his hand. Carla took it with a slight tremor. "I want to publicly acknowledge Carla Voss," he said. "She has completed an intensive restorative justice program, met with civil rights mentors, and committed herself to becoming an advocate for inclusion. Carla, would you say a few words?" Carla took a breath and looked at Emery, then at Marcus, then at the assembled crowd. "I am deeply sorry for my actions," she began. 2 weeks ago I allowed bias to override my duty of care. I humiliated a child and betrayed our airline's values. I have learned more than I ever expected about the weight of my decisions. I promise to use this experience to guide my work, to listen, to support, and to never allow anyone to feel unseen. Thank you for the chance to make things right." Her voice caught, but she held her ground. The audience responded with genuine applause. Marcus returned to the microphone. "This is what true accountability looks like," he said. "Not hiding mistakes, not sweeping them under the rug, facing them, learning from them, and growing stronger." He turned back to Emery. "Son, you reminded us all that a single voice can change the flight path of an entire airline." Emery blushed, but looked resolute. "Thank you, Dad." Lena stepped forward and wrapped her arms around both of them. A photographer snapped the moment. It would become the new emblem of Meridian Skies leadership, a father, a son, and a redeemed employee standing together under a banner of hope. Later, as the official launch concluded, passengers lined up to place their hands on the plaque bearing the initiative's emblem. A family of 4, a retired teacher, a young engineer, all felt that they, too, belonged. Across the runway apron in the control tower above, employees watched on screens. Many wiped tears. They felt part of a new era, one where respect was not optional and dignity was embedded in every procedure. Back in the boardroom in Chicago, the final count of votes arrived. Investors confirmed their support for the new initiative, recognizing that long-term growth came from authentic leadership. In the years that followed, Meridian Skies Airlines saw fewer discrimination complaints. Customer satisfaction rose. Employee engagement soared. New training programs and hiring initiatives diversified leadership. Other airlines took notice and followed suit. But none of that would have happened without a torn ticket and one boy's courage. That evening, Marcus returned to his hotel suite. He found Emery asleep on the couch, journal open. The last page read, "What began as turbulence became my tailwind." He sat beside his son and brushed a stray lock of hair from Emery's forehead. He whispered, "I'm so proud of you." Lena watched from the doorway, her eyes glistening. Together, they had turned a moment of injustice into a journey of reform. They had shown that even the smallest voice in the cabin could become the wind beneath thousands of wings. And as the setting sun cast golden light across the tarmac, the sky seemed to stretch even wider, an open invitation for every traveler to fly with dignity, respect, and hope. Thank you for watching Emery and Marcus Duvall's journey from hurt and humiliation to hope and reform. We've seen how a single act of discrimination can shatter a child's sense of belonging, and how one voice can ignite change in an entire airline. Let this story remind us to treat every passenger, every person, with dignity and respect. If you're moved by their courage, please like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe for more powerful stories that challenge injustice and celebrate the human spirit. Stay tuned next time. We explore another real-life moment that proves no act of kindness or courage is ever too small. Together, we can keep the conversation and the change flying high.